Honey, could you step out of the frame? This is for family only. Those 12 words shattered my marriage in less than 5 seconds. My husband Darius stood there adjusting the lapels of the $5,000 Tom Ford suit I had bought him, looking at me with a mix of annoyance and pity. He was surrounded by his mother, his sister, and right next to him, his ex-wife Vanessa. They were the family. I was just the wallet. I stood frozen on the manicured lawn of the estate that my name was on the deed for. The photographer lowered his camera, looking awkward. The 60 guests at the garden party went silent. I looked at Darius, waiting for him to laugh to say it was a bad joke. But he didn't. He just motioned with his hand, a shooing gesture like I was hired help that had wandered into the VIP section. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply reached for my left hand, slid off the 3-carat diamond ring that I had upgraded myself last year, and dropped it with a soft splash into a flute of vintage champagne. Then I turned around, walked to my Porsche, and drove away from the life I had spent 10 years funding. My name is Nia, and at 34 years old, I thought I had everything. A handsome husband, a thriving career as a forensic accountant, and a beautiful home in the hills. But as I drove down the winding road that night, leaving the party of the year behind, I realized I had been living a lie. A very expensive lie. Before I tell you how I brought an entire dynasty to its knees in less than 24 hours, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe. This story is for you. Let's go back to earlier that evening. It was Darius's 40th birthday, and the theme was all-white excellence. The dress code was strictly enforced. I had spent weeks planning every detail, ensuring the catering was from the finest soul food fusion restaurant in Los Angeles. The wine was imported from a Black-owned vineyard in Napa, and the decor was impeccable. I wanted Darius to feel like a king. I wore a custom red dress. It was a bold choice, I know. Everyone else was in white linen and silk. But something in my spirit that morning told me to wear red. Maybe my subconscious knew there would be blood in the water. When I walked downstairs, Darius frowned. "Why are you wearing red, Nia?" "You stand out too much," he said, sipping a scotch. I fixed his tie, smoothing the silk. "Because I am your wife, Darius. I am supposed to stand out." He grunted and checked his watch. A Patek Philippe replica he insisted on wearing because he could not afford the real one, though he told everyone it was authentic. That should have been my first sign. The man preferred a flashy fake to a modest reality. The party was in full swing by sunset. The garden looked magical with fairy lights draped over the oak trees. The air smelled of jasmine and expensive perfume. Everyone who was anyone was there. Darius's business partners, local politicians, and of course his mother, Lucille. Lucille was a woman who believed she was the matriarch of a royal family, despite having no kingdom. She sat on a high-backed wicker chair like a throne holding court. When I approached her with a tray of appetizers, trying to be the good hostess, she didn't even look at me. "Where is Vanessa?" Lucille asked, scanning the crowd. "We cannot cut the cake without Vanessa." I felt a tightness in my chest. Vanessa was Darius's ex-wife. They had been divorced for 8 years, but in this family, she was still the golden girl. She was the mother of Darius's 12-year-old daughter, Maya. I loved Maya like my own, but Vanessa used that child as a leverage point constantly. "Vanessa is late as usual, Lucille," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And we have plenty of guests waiting." Lucille finally looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "You have no patience, Nia. That is your problem. You are always so transactional. Family runs on love, not schedules." It was ironic coming from a woman who had asked me to pay her country club dues last week because her pension check was late. But I smiled and walked away. I was used to it. I was the practical one. The one who made sure the bills were paid, the taxes were filed, and the investments were secure. They called me cold. I called myself responsible. Then Vanessa arrived. She made an entrance that stopped the music. She was wearing a white lace gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. It was tight, revealing, and completely inappropriate for a family birthday party. She glided through the crowd, laughing loudly, hugging everyone. When she saw Darius, she threw her arms around his neck, whispering something that made him throw his head back and laugh. A laugh I hadn't heard in years. I stood by the bar watching them. I felt like a spectator at a play I hadn't auditioned for. Brad, my brother-in-law, came up beside me. Brad was the only white person at the party, married to Darius's sister Kayla. He was a quiet man, a lawyer who spent most of these gatherings hiding near the food to avoid Lucille's criticism. "She looks like she is ready to walk down the aisle," Brad muttered, nodding toward Vanessa. I took a sip of my sparkling water. "Let her have her moment, Brad. It is Darius's birthday. I just want peace." "Peace is expensive, Nia," Brad said, looking at me with genuine concern. "Are you sure you can afford the price they are asking?" I didn't understand what he meant then. I thought he was talking about money. I had plenty of money. What I didn't have was respect. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the hills. The photographer, a high-end professional I had hired for $2,000, called everyone over to the gazebo. "Time for the legacy photo," the photographer shouted. "Everyone, please gather round." This was the tradition, the big group photo. I put down my glass and walked over, smoothing my red dress. I stood next to Darius, placing my hand on his arm. He felt tense. His muscles were rigid under the expensive fabric. Lucille began directing people like a traffic cop. "Kayla, you and Brad stand in the back. Maya, sweetie, come to the front. Darius, fix your jacket." Then she looked at Vanessa. "Vanessa, darling, come stand on the other side of Darius. We need the parents together." My stomach dropped. I was standing on Darius's right. Vanessa moved to his left. We were bookending him. It was awkward, but I forced a smile. I could handle this. I was the wife. She was the past. "Closer," Lucille shouted. "Everyone squeeze in." Vanessa leaned her head on Darius's shoulder. I felt a surge of anger, but I maintained my composure. I was a professional. I dealt with hostile audits and aggressive investors for a living. I could handle a messy family photo. Then the photographer lowered his lens. "Excuse me, ma'am," the lady in red. "The contrast is a bit high with all the white. Could you maybe move to the edge?" I blinked. He was talking to me. The hostess. The wife. Lucille clapped her hands. "Oh, that is a wonderful idea. Nia, move to the end. It will look more balanced." I took a deep breath and stepped to the far right of the group, leaving Darius and Vanessa in the center. I felt a humiliating heat rise up my neck. I was now standing next to a distant cousin I didn't even know. "Okay, perfect," the photographer said. "On 3, 1, 2. "Wait!" Lucille yelled. She marched over to the group, grabbed Vanessa's arm, and pulled her even closer to Darius. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth or gratitude for the lifestyle I provided them. "Actually, this is a legacy photo," Lucille announced, her voice carrying across the silent garden. "We need just the core family, the bloodline." The air left the garden. Even the crickets seemed to stop chirping. Darius the first said softly. Darius looked at his shoes, then at his mother, then finally at me. He didn't look angry. He looked resigned. He looked like a man who had made a choice long ago and was just now enforcing it. "Nia," he said, his voice loud enough for the back row to hear. "Can you step out? This is a family photo." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "Step out. Step out of the garden I landscaped. Step out of the life I built. Step out of the illusion I had been maintaining." Vanessa let out a small tinkling laugh. "Oh, come on, Nia. Don't be huffing and puffing. It is just one picture. Don't be so sensitive. It is history. We have history." She reached out and brushed lint off Darius's lapel. The lapel of the suit I bought. I looked around the circle of faces. Kayla looked down. Brad looked horrified. Lucille looked triumphant. And Darius. Darius just looked waiting. Waiting for me to obey. Waiting for me to do what I always did. Swallow my pride. Write the check, fix the problem, and fade into the background. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock opening. The realization hit me with the force of a tsunami. I was not their family. I was their staff. I was their banker. I was their safety net. But I was not their family. And if I wasn't family, then I had no obligations. I looked Darius dead in the eye. He flinched, perhaps seeing something new in my gaze. He saw the forensic accountant finally looking at the ledger of our marriage and realizing the numbers didn't add up. "Okay," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "You are right. Family only." I raised my left hand. The diamond caught the last rays of the setting sun. It was beautiful, flawless, cold. I slid it off my finger. My knuckle felt naked and light. I turned to the table beside me where a tray of half-empty champagne flutes sat. I held the ring over a glass. "Happy birthday, Darius," I said. I dropped the ring. It hit the glass with a sharp cling and sank to the bottom, bubbling in the golden liquid. Then I turned my back on them. "Nia," I heard Darius call out, but there was no authority in his voice anymore. "Nia, where are you going? Stop making a scene." I didn't stop. I walked across the lawn, my red dress flowing behind me like a warning flag. I could feel 60 pairs of eyes burning into my back. I could hear the whispers starting, the murmur of confusion and shock. I reached the driveway where the valet was waiting. He looked at me confused because the party was still in full swing. "My car, please," I said. "But Mrs. Brooks, the cake cutting is in 10 minutes. "I am not Mrs. Brooks," I said, handing him my ticket. "Not anymore." He scrambled to get my Porsche. I got in the leather seat, cool against my skin. I started the engine, the roar of the motor drowning out the faint sound of jazz coming from the garden. I punched the accelerator and sped out of the gates, leaving tire marks on the pavement. My heart was pounding in my throat, but my hands were steady. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go back. I drove toward the city, the lights of Los Angeles blurring into streaks of gold and red. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. I glanced at it. It was a text from Brad. I picked it up expecting an apology or maybe a warning that Darius was coming after me. But the message was so absurd, so perfectly indicative of the delusion I had just escaped, that I almost laughed out loud. Brad wrote, "Nia, did you really leave? Mom is screaming at the caterers. She wants to know why nobody is serving the cake. She says you didn't sign the overtime authorization for the staff." I stared at the screen. Even now, after I had walked out, after I had discarded my marriage in a champagne glass, they didn't see a woman in pain. They saw a malfunctioning ATM. They saw a servant who had left her post. I didn't reply. I threw the phone onto the back seat. "Let them eat cake," I whispered to the empty car. "If they can pay for it." But I knew they couldn't. I knew exactly how much was in Darius's bank account because I monitored it. I knew exactly how much credit was left on Lucille's cards because I paid them. And I knew that without my signature, the staff at that party would be packing up their trucks within the hour. The sun had fully set now. I was alone on the highway, but for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt dangerous. I pulled into the valet of the Four Seasons Hotel. I needed a war room, because tomorrow morning the banks would open. And while Darius was nursing a hangover, I would be executing a foreclosure. He wanted me out of the picture. Well, he was about to learn that when you crop out the person holding up the frame, the whole picture falls apart. Before I tell you what happened when the music stopped and the bills arrived, take a second to verify your subscription. You do not want to miss the financial bloodbath that happens in part 2. Because darling hell hath no fury like an accountant scorned. The silence of the presidential suite at the Four Seasons was a stark contrast to the performative chaos I had just left behind. The door clicked shut, sealing out the world, and for the first time in hours, I exhaled. I did not throw myself onto the bed and weep. I did not pace the floor, wringing my hands. I walked straight to the minibar, poured a glass of sparkling water, and sat at the mahogany desk overlooking the glittering Los Angeles skyline. It was time to work. I opened my sleek silver laptop. The screen glowed to life, reflecting in my eyes. To the outside world, to the tabloids and the society pages, I was Nia Brooks, the supportive wife of real estate mogul Darius Brooks. I was the arm candy, the organizer, the one who smoothed over his rough edges and ensured his ties matched his pocket squares. But as I placed my fingers on the keyboard, the truth was about to be weaponized. Darius liked to call himself a self-made man. He loved the phrase. He used it in every interview, every podcast, every acceptance speech for awards I had nominated him for. But the reality was buried deep in the encrypted servers of Shadow Oak Holdings, the private equity firm I established 3 months before our wedding. I navigated to the banking portal. The interface was familiar, comforting in its logic. Numbers did not lie. Numbers did not gaslight you. Numbers did not ask you to step out of family photos while spending your money. I logged in as the primary administrator. There it was, the financial nervous system of the Brooks family dynasty. And I held the scalpel. I scrolled through the accounts. The operating account for Darius's firm, the joint household account, the discretionary fund Lucille used for her weekly spa treatments and charity luncheons, and of course the Platinum Business American Express card currently being swiped at the garden party. I looked at the balance. Darius had burned through $12,000 just this week on deposits for a yacht trip he hadn't told me about. Probably another boys' trip that would somehow include Vanessa. My finger hovered over the status button. It currently read, active. I remembered the look on Lucille's face when she told me to move. The dismissal, the arrogance. They thought my value began and ended with my ability to write checks. They thought I was desperate to belong to their prestigious bloodline. They never understood that I didn't marry Darius for his status. I married him because I loved him. And because I loved him, I had protected him from his own incompetence for a decade. But love was a depreciating asset, and I was liquidating my position. I clicked the mouse. Status frozen. Reason suspected fraud. I repeated the process for the joint checking account. Frozen. I moved to the investment accounts. I transferred the liquid capital money that was legally mine via the inheritance from my grandmother that I had foolishly commingled with family funds into a secure offshore holding account. Within 10 minutes, the Brooks family was effectively destitute. They just didn't know it yet. I sat back and watched the clock. It was 9:42 p.m. The cake cutting was scheduled for 9:30 p.m. Right about now, the catering manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, who did not tolerate late payments, would be running the final bill. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:45 p.m., a notification popped up on my phone screen. Transaction declined, American Express, ending in 4092. Amount $35,400. Merchant Epicurean Delights Catering. A second notification followed immediately. Transaction declined, Visa signature ending in 8812. Amount $35,400. I took a slow sip of water. The visualization was vivid in my mind. I could see it perfectly. Darius slightly tipsy, laughing with his boys, reaching into his pocket with that casual arrogance. He would hand over the card without looking busy making a joke. Mrs. Higgins would run it. The machine would beep that harsh, rejecting tone. Darius would frown. He would tell her to run it again. He would blame the chip. He would blame the signal. But by the third attempt, the whispers would start. The guests would notice the delay. Lucille would be tapping her foot, wondering why the champagne had stopped flowing. My phone began to vibrate. It was not Darius yet. It was an automated fraud alert text from the bank asking if I had authorized a charge of $35,000. I deleted it. Then the real show began. My phone lit up. Incoming call, unknown number. I knew he would call from someone else's phone. I had blocked his number, Lucille's number, and Vanessa's number before I even merged onto the freeway. I let it ring 3 times. Let him sweat. Let him wonder if I was even alive. let the panic set in as Mrs. Higgins started instructing her staff to pack up the plates, perhaps even taking the half-eaten lobster tails off the tables. I swiped answer and put the phone to my ear. I said nothing. Nia Darius's voice was a ragged bark. He sounded breathless panic warring with fury. Nia, pick up the phone. I am here, Darius, I said. My voice was low, smooth, unbothered. What the hell is going on? The cards are declining. All of them. Mrs. Higgins is threatening to call the police for theft of services. She is taking the bar down. Nia, in front of the mayor. That sounds incredibly stressful, I replied, examining my manicure. Stressful, Darius screamed. It is humiliating. Fix it. Call the bank. Tell them it is a mistake. Transfer the money from the savings. Just do whatever magic you do and get the card working. Now I leaned back in the leather chair, closing my eyes. I could hear the background noise on his end, the murmur of confused guests, the clatter of silverware being aggressively cleared. I could hear Lucille screeching in the distance something about incompetence. I cannot do that, Darius, I said. What do you mean you can't? You handle the finances. You are the one who deals with this. I used to, I corrected him. But I realized something tonight. You were very clear, Darius. You wanted a family photo. You wanted to celebrate with your real family, the people who matter. Nia, stop playing games. This isn't the time. It is the perfect time, I said. You see, paying bills is a wife's duty, or a partner's duty. But since I was asked to step out of the family, I assume I have also stepped out of the financial obligations of that family. There was a silence on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence. Are you crazy? Darius hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You are going to ruin me. Do you know who is at this party? Do you know how this looks? It looks like a man who cannot pay for his own birthday party, I said. It looks like a man who spent $5,000 on a suit but has zero credit. You froze the accounts he accused. I know you did. You are doing this out of spite because of a stupid picture. It wasn't just a picture, Darius. It was a public statement. You made your position clear. Now I am making mine clear. Nia, listen to me, he pleaded, shifting tactics. He tried to summon that charm, that smooth baritone that had convinced me to invest in his first failing development project 10 years ago. Baby, look, I am sorry. Okay, I had too much to drink. Mom was pressuring me. Vanessa was just being Vanessa. Come back and fix this and we will talk in the morning. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. There is nothing to talk about. And I am not coming back. Nia, don't do this. Mrs. Higgins is literally calling 911 right now. She says this is fraud. Then I suggest you ask your family for help, I said. Ask Lucille. Ask Vanessa. Surely the mother of your child can chip in. Or maybe you can sell that Patek Philippe on your wrist. Oh wait, you can't. It is a fake. Fuck you, Nia, he screamed, the mask slipping completely. The line went dead. I placed the phone gently on the desk. I looked back at the laptop screen. I wasn't done. The catering bill was just the opening act. The main event was the mortgage. The house they were standing in, the sprawling estate in Baldwin Hills that Lucille bragged about to her church friends, was technically owned by a shell company under Shadow Oak Holdings. Darius paid rent to the company to cover the mortgage. It was a tax strategy I had devised to protect us. But Darius hadn't paid the rent from his personal account in 3 months. I had been covering it from my personal funds to keep the books balanced. Not anymore. I opened the property management file. I drafted a notice to quit. In California, eviction was a long process, but immediate foreclosure due to default on a commercial lease. That was faster. Especially when the lease agreement which Darius had signed without reading had a strict immediate termination upon insolvency clause. I hit print. The wireless printer in the suite hummed to life. I walked over to the window. I could imagine the scene in the hills, the police lights flashing against the garden walls, the guests shuffling to their cars, whispering about the downfall of the Brooks family, the shame burning through Lucille's veins. But I felt no guilt. For 10 years I had been the glue holding their fragile egos together. I had made myself small so they could feel big. I had stepped into the shadows so they could shine in the light. Tonight I stepped out of the shadows, and without me they were left in the dark. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Brad. Police are here. They are talking to Darius. Vanessa is trying to leave, but her car is blocked in by the catering trucks. Nia, what is happening? I typed a reply. Consequences are happening, Brad. Go home to your wife. You don't want to be in the background of this picture. I closed the laptop. The night was young, and I had an early meeting with a divorce attorney at 8 a.m. But before that, I had one more asset to leverage. I picked up the room service menu. I ordered a steak medium rare and a bottle of their finest Cabernet. I was going to eat a full meal, something I rarely did at family gatherings, because Lucille always commented on my weight. Tonight I would feast. Tomorrow they would starve. The medium rare ribeye steak arrived on a silver cart, accompanied by a bottle of Camus Cabernet. I picked up the heavy steak knife, feeling its weight in my hand. It felt appropriate. Tonight I was cutting away the dead weight from my life. I had just taken my first bite, savoring the rich flavor that I had denied myself for years to fit into Lucille's sample size expectations, when my phone vibrated across the marble desk. It was not a text this time. It was a FaceTime request from Lucille. I set down my fork and wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. I propped the phone up against the wine bottle and accepted the call. Lucille's face filled the screen. She was flushed, her perfectly coiffed wig slightly askew. Behind her, I could see the chaos of the party. Guests were huddled in small groups looking at their phones. The music had stopped. "You ungrateful, spiteful little girl," Lucille hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "How dare you? How dare you embarrass this family?" "Hello to you too, Lucille," I said, taking a sip of wine. "You look stressed. Is the party not going well?" "Do not play coy with me, Nia," she screamed. "The caterer is packing up the bar. She says the card was declined for fraud." "Fraud? Do you know who is here? The councilman is here. The pastor is here. You are making us look like paupers." I swirled the wine in my glass. "Well, technically, Lucille, if you cannot pay your bills, you are paupers. You just have better clothes." "Fix this," she demanded. "Unfreeze the accounts right now. If you do not, I will ruin you. I will tell everyone. I will call the women at the club. I will tell them you are mentally unstable. I will tell them you are stealing from Darius. I will make sure you never show your face in this town again." I stared at her pixelated face. For years, this woman had terrified me. I had sought her approval like a starving dog begging for scraps. I had funded her lifestyle, bought her silence, and tolerated her insults just to keep the peace. But looking at her now, desperate and powerless, I felt nothing but pity. "You are going to ruin my reputation?" I asked calmly. "That is interesting, Lucille, because I was just looking at the financials for the Brooks Heritage Foundation." Lucille froze. Her eyes widened. The foundation was her crown jewel. It was a charity supposedly dedicated to inner-city arts programs, but in reality it was a slush fund that paid for her first-class travel, her wardrobe, and her endless gala appearances. And I was the sole donor. "What about the foundation?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. I tapped a key on my laptop. "I just sent an email to the board of directors. And since I am the board of directors, as well as the CFO and the primary benefactor, the email was quite short." "What did you do?" "I formally resigned, Lucille. And effective immediately, I have withdrawn the annual guarantee of $250,000. Lucille gasped. The sound was audible even over the hotel Wi-Fi. "You cannot do that. The gala is next month. We have vendors to pay. We have the venue deposit." "I know," I said, "and without my $250,000, you have exactly $4,000 in the operating account. That might cover the flowers." "Maybe." "You are evil," she whispered. "No, Lucille. I am purely business. You see, the foundation's bylaws state that the primary donor must be a member of the family in good standing. And since I was asked to step out of the family photo, I am clearly no longer in good standing. I watched as the realization washed over her. It wasn't just the money. It was her status. Without that foundation, she was just an aging woman with a mountain of debt and a mean streak. She would lose her seat at the high table of society. The other women she terrorized would turn on her the moment they smelled blood. And just to be thorough, I continued, my voice ice cold. I also blind copied the notification to the other potential donors on your mailing list. You know, the ones currently standing in your backyard eating dry appetizers because the catering staff left. They should be receiving the email right about now. On the screen, I saw Lucille turn around. A woman in a blue sequined dress, one of Lucille's frenemies from the country club, was looking at her phone. She looked up at Lucille, whispered something to her husband, and they immediately turned toward the exit. It was happening. The dominoes were falling. Lucille turned back to the camera, her face pale. "You can stop this. Nia, please. I will let you take the picture. We can Photoshop you in. Just transfer the funds. Photoshop me in?" I laughed. It was a genuine, deep laugh. "You still do not get it. I do not want to be in the picture, Lucille. I bought the camera, I bought the film, I bought the studio, and now I am closing the business." I saw a hand reach into the frame on her end. It was Darius. He looked sweaty and disheveled. "Give me the phone, Mom," he snapped. He looked into the camera. "Nia, stop this madness. You made your point. You are powerful. Okay, you win. Now put the money back." "I am eating dinner, Darius," I said. "I will speak to you through my lawyer tomorrow." "Wait," he said, looking desperate. "Vanessa is here. She says she can help. She says she can cover the catering bill." I paused. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The trap was set. "Oh," I asked. "Vanessa is going to pay the $35,000 bill. That is very generous of her." Darius looked relieved. "See, family helps family. Unlike you. Vanessa is stepping up." I smiled. It was a shark smile. "Put her on, Darius. I would love to hear this." Darius handed the phone to Vanessa. She looked triumphant. She smoothed her hair, checking her reflection in the screen before looking at me. "You are pathetic, Nia," Vanessa sneered. "Leaving your husband on his birthday." "Don't worry. I will take care of him. I always have. I will put this on my card." I leaned closer to my screen. "Which card? Vanessa, the Chase Sapphire, or the Capital One Venture?" She blinked. "Excuse me." "Because I am looking at your credit report right now," I said. "It is amazing what you can find when you are a forensic accountant and someone applies for a loan co-signed by their ex-husband without his current wife's knowledge." Vanessa's face went slack. "You have $52,000 in consumer debt, Vanessa." I recited the numbers from memory. "Your Chase card is maxed out. Your Capital One card is 3 months past due. You are driving a leased Range Rover that is 2 payments away from repossession. So please tell me, which card are you going to use to save the day?" Vanessa went silent. She looked around nervously, hoping Darius hadn't heard. But Darius was standing right next to her. "What is she talking about, Vanessa?" Darius asked. "She is lying," Vanessa said quickly, her voice rising in pitch. "She is just jealous. I have plenty of money." "Do you?" I asked. "Then hand the caterer your card. Mrs. Higgins is standing right behind you. I can see her. Hand her the card, Vanessa. Be the hero." Vanessa stood frozen. She clutched her purse to her chest. I left my wallet in the car." I laughed again. "You didn't leave your wallet in the car. You left your dignity there." Darius grabbed the phone back. "Nia, is that true? Is she broke?" "That is the wrong question, Darius," I said. "The question is, why did you think she had money?" "Oh, that is right. Because you have been funneling $10,000 a month into her account from our joint savings labeled as consulting fees." Darius went white. "You thought I didn't see it?" I asked. "You thought I was just a stupid woman who signed the tax returns without reading them." "I saw every penny, Darius." I saw the tuition payments for schools Maya doesn't attend. I saw the payments for office supplies that matched the exact price of a Chanel bag. Nia, he stammered. I am done, Darius. Enjoy the rest of your party. I hear the cake is delicious. It is a shame nobody paid for it. I hung up the phone. The room was silent again, but the energy had shifted. I felt lighter. The heaviness that had sat on my chest for years, the constant need to please, the fear of rejection, the anxiety of not being good enough was evaporating. I took another bite of my steak. It was perfect. My phone lit up one more time. A text from Brad. Vanessa tried to run her card. It declined. Mrs. Higgins just announced loudly that the police are on their way to file a report for theft. Lucille is crying in the azalea bushes. Darius is drinking straight from a bottle of vodka. Nia, you nuked the whole site from orbit. I picked up my phone and typed a simple reply. It is just business, Brad. Just business. I finished my meal in peace. But as I wiped my lips, I knew the night was far from over. The financial ruin was just the first wave. The legal tsunami was coming next. Because while they were scrambling to pay for appetizers, I was preparing to foreclose on their entire existence. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I could see the hills in the distance dotted with lights. Somewhere up there, my husband was realizing that his golden parachute was actually an anchor, and I was the one who had cut the rope. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the banks would open, and the real pain would begin. But for tonight, I had one more surprise. A little clause in the mortgage contract that Darius had signed without reading. A clause that allowed the lender me to inspect the property at any time without notice. I checked my watch. It was nearing midnight. The party should be dead by now. It was time for the landlord to pay a visit. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed the file folder marked foreclosure proceedings. And I grabbed a fresh coat of red lipstick. If I was going to be the villain in their story, I was going to look the part. Many people ask me why I stayed for so long. Why did I endure the insults from Lucille? Why did I tolerate Vanessa's constant presence? Why did I let Darius treat me like a glorified accountant rather than a wife? You look at me and you see a woman who was weak, a woman who was desperate for love. You are wrong. I did not stay because I was weak. I stayed because I was building a case. I reached across the desk and picked up a thick manila folder. It was heavy. Heavy with 3 years of bank statements, credit card receipts, and private investigator reports. I ran my hand over the label. It simply read, Project Legacy. Darius thought he was so clever. He thought because he was the CEO on paper he controlled the narrative. But he forgot that I was the one who balanced the books. And numbers have a funny way of telling secrets that people try to hide. For the last 3 years, our joint account showed a monthly withdrawal of $15,000. The line item was always listed as Tuition St. Augustine Academy. That is the prestigious private school where Vanessa and Darius sent their daughter Maya. Or so I was told. Lucille always bragged about it. She would sit at Sunday dinner and say how Maya was receiving a world-class education unlike the public school peasants. She would praise Darius for being such a devoted father, sparing no expense for his child. 6 months ago, I called St. Augustine Academy. I wanted to make a direct donation to their arts program in Maya's name. The bursar was very confused. She told me that Maya Brooks was indeed a student there, but her tuition was fully covered by a legacy scholarship because her grandfather was an alumni. $0. Maya's tuition was free. So where was $15,000 going every single month? I hired a forensic digital analyst. We traced the IP addresses associated with the transfers. The money wasn't going to a school. It was being routed through a shell company called V-Lux Consulting and then deposited immediately into 3 offshore accounts based in Malta. And what were those accounts linked to Royal Flush Online Casino, high-stakes virtual poker, and a massive debt consolidation firm for habitual gamblers? Vanessa wasn't just broke, she was a gambling addict. I opened the file and stared at the photos. Vanessa at a casino in Vegas when she said she was at a yoga retreat. Vanessa pawning a diamond bracelet that Darius had given her. Vanessa crying in her car outside a loan shark's office. Darius knew. He had to know. He was funneling our money, the money I made from my investments, the money we were saving for our future children, to feed his ex-wife's addiction. He was enabling her sickness to keep up the appearance of their perfect golden life. He was robbing us to protect her lie. That was the moment my love died. It didn't die with a bang. It died with a spreadsheet. I looked at the clock. It was 10:15 p.m. The party at the mansion was currently in its death throes. But I wasn't done twisting the knife. Blocking the credit cards was just a warning shot. It was time to drop the nuclear bomb. I logged back into the Shadow Oak Holdings mainframe. I navigated to the Corporate Governance tab. When you suspect embezzlement in a company, you have a fiduciary duty to act. As the CFO, if I knowingly allowed Darius to use company funds for personal debts, I could be liable. I could go to jail along with him. I was not going to jail for a man who cropped me out of a photo. I pulled up the form. Notification of suspicious activity and request for forensic audit. This was the kill switch. Once I submitted this, the bank would automatically freeze every single asset associated with Darius Brooks. Not just his credit cards, his business payroll, his lines of credit, his construction loans, even his personal access to the building. The system asked me for confirmation. Are you sure you want to flag these accounts for immediate liquidation and review? I thought about Maya, the sweet little girl who wore hand-me-down shoes because her mother gambled away the clothing allowance. I thought about the lies. I thought about the disrespect. I clicked, yes. Processing, request approved, accounts frozen, IRS notification sent, FBI Financial Crimes Division notification sent. Done. I leaned back in my chair and imagined the scene. At the mansion, the effects would be instant. My phone lit up with a text from Brad. It came through at 10:18 p.m. The lights just went out. I smiled. Of course they did. The electricity for the outdoor lighting and the massive sound system was powered by industrial generators rented from a high-end event company. They operated on a smart meter system linked to a corporate credit card. When I froze the business accounts, the payment for the hourly power usage failed. Auto shutdown initiated. I could see it so clearly. The fairy lights dying. The music cutting off mid-song. The sudden oppressive darkness descending on the all-white party. Brad texted again. It is pitch black. People are screaming. The generator company just called the DJ and told him to pack up because the deposit was revoked. Darius is trying to find the breaker box, but he is too drunk to stand up. I took a sip of my wine. And then the final indignity. Brad's next text made me laugh out loud in the quiet hotel room. The waiters are taking the plates. They are literally taking food off the tables while people are eating. Mrs. Higgins is shouting that she owns the food until the invoice is paid. Lucille is trying to wrestle a lobster tail away from a server. This was the reality they deserved. They wanted to live in the dark, fine. Now they could sit in it. But the darkness wasn't just physical. By tomorrow morning, the darkness would be legal. Darius wouldn't just be waking up to a hangover. He would be waking up to a locked office, a seized bank account, and federal agents asking questions about why his ex-wife's gambling debts were listed as construction materials on his tax returns. I closed the file folder. Vanessa wanted to be the center of attention. She wanted to be the golden girl. Well, tomorrow she was going to be the star witness in a fraud investigation. I stood up and walked to the mirror. I wiped off my lipstick. I took off the diamond earrings. I washed my face. Nia, the wife, was gone. Nia, the enabler, was gone. The woman looking back at me was clean. She was free, and she was ready for war. I picked up my phone and sent one final text to Brad. Tell Maya to pack her favorite bag. You are picking her up in the morning. She is not staying in that house when the marshals arrive. I turned off the lights in the hotel suite. I slept like a baby. While 5 miles away, my husband was sitting in the dark, wondering why his world had suddenly ceased to exist. I did not need to be a fly on the wall to know exactly what was happening in Baldwin Hills at that very moment. I knew the players, I knew the script, and most importantly, I knew Brad. Brad was a good man. He was a soft-spoken corporate attorney who had married into the Brooks family 5 years ago. He loved my sister-in-law Kayla, but he was terrified of her mother. For years I had watched him shrink himself to fit into their loud, chaotic dynamic. He was the only white face in the room, constantly walking on eggshells, trying so hard not to overstep that he often let them walk all over him. But Brad was also a lawyer, and lawyers know the smell of blood in the water. While I was finishing my steak at the Four Seasons back at the mansion, the last of the guests were scrambling to their cars in the dark. The valet service had abandoned their post when the check bounced, leaving the councilman and the pastor to retrieve their own keys from the lockbox. It was a humiliation of biblical proportions. In the center of the darkened garden, lit only by the flashlights on their iPhones, stood the ruins of the Brooks dynasty: Lucille, Darius, Vanessa, and Brad. According to what Brad told me later, the silence was broken only by the sound of Darius pouring vodka into a plastic cup. He had moved on from the expensive scotch to whatever was left open on the abandoned bar. "She is just throwing a tantrum," Lucille declared, her voice echoing in the empty yard. She adjusted her shawl, shivering in the night air. "Naya always had a dramatic streak. She gets it from her father. He was unstable too." Brad looked up from his phone. His face, illuminated by the blue light of the screen, was pale. "Lucille, this is not a tantrum," Brad said quietly. "Oh, shut up, Brad," Vanessa snapped. She was pacing back and forth, her wedding dress gown trailing in the dirt. "You don't know her like we do. She is just trying to scare us. She will be back tomorrow morning begging for forgiveness. She is obsessed with Darius. She cannot function without him." Brad ignored her. He was scrolling through his email. Because I had listed him as the registered agent for several of Darius's LLCs, he was receiving the automated notifications that I had triggered. "Guys, you need to listen to me," Brad said, his voice rising with a rare urgency. "I just got a notification from the court system. And another one from the IRS portal." Darius laughed. It was a wet, sloppy sound. "Tell her to sue me. I am her husband. Spousal privilege. She can't do anything." "That is not how it works," Darius, Brad said, stepping into the circle of flashlight beams. He held up his phone. "Naya didn't file for divorce. She filed a whistleblower complaint. She filed for a forensic audit of Shadow Oak Holdings. Do you understand what that means?" "It means she is being a bitch," Darius slurred. "No, you idiot," Brad shouted. It was the first time anyone had ever heard him raise his voice at Darius. "It means she is piercing the corporate veil. She is handing over the books to the federal government. She is claiming that you have been embezzling funds and using the company to launder money for illegal gambling debts." The word gambling hung in the air. Vanessa stopped pacing. "She can't prove that," Vanessa whispered. Brad looked at her with disgust. "Vanessa, the notification lists specific transaction ID numbers. It lists dates. It lists the offshore accounts in Malta. She has everything. She isn't looking for evidence. She already has it. She is just officially submitting it." Lucille waved her hand dismissively. "So what? We will get a lawyer. We will fight it. We are the Brooks family. We have connections. Call Judge Henderson. He owes me a favor." Brad laughed. It was a hysterical, terrified sound. "Lucille, Judge Henderson was at this party. I saw him running to his Mercedes 10 minutes ago when the lights went out. Nobody is going to help you. This is a federal filing. This is RICO territory if they find a pattern." He turned to Darius, who was swaying slightly. "Darius, listen to me. I am a contract lawyer, not a criminal defense attorney, but I know enough to tell you that you are standing on the edge of a cliff. Nia isn't just cutting you off. She is nuking the mountain." Darius stared at him. His eyes were glassy red-rimmed and full of confused rage. He couldn't process it. In his mind, I was still the quiet, dark-skinned girl who was lucky to be married to him. I was the one who fixed things. I was the safety net. The idea that the safety net had turned into a noose was impossible for him to grasp. "She wouldn't do that," Darius muttered. "She loves me. She bought me this suit." "She bought you the suit," Brad said, speaking slowly as if to a child. "And tonight, she documented that you bought it with misappropriated funds. Every single thing you own, Darius, is compromised. The car, the watch, this house." Darius looked around the dark garden. The house loomed behind him, a massive shadow against the stars. "This is my house!" Darius roared suddenly. He threw his plastic cup onto the grass. "My name is on the mailbox. I am the man here." "Actually," Brad corrected him, checking another email that had just pinged into his inbox. "According to this notice to quit, that was just delivered to my inbox as your counsel, you are a tenant in default. And since the lease was commercial, not residential, you have virtually no protections." "You are lying!" Darius screamed. He lunged at Brad. Brad stumbled back, holding his phone up like a shield. "I am not lying, Darius. Read the email. She has activated the insolvency clause. She is evicting you." Darius grabbed Brad by the collar of his shirt. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, ugly entitlement. "Call her," Darius commanded, shaking him. "Call her and tell her to stop. Tell her I will. I will punish her. Tell her she is grounded." Brad pushed Darius away. Darius stumbled and fell onto the manicured grass that I paid $300 a week to maintain. "She isn't answering." Darius, Brad yelled, straightening his jacket. "And honestly, I wouldn't answer either." "You people are insane. She paid for everything. She covered for your gambling ex-wife. She funded your fake charity, Lucille. She kept this sinking ship afloat for 10 years, and you couldn't even let her stand in a photograph?" Lucille gasped. "Whose side are you on, Bradley? I am on the side of not going to prison for accessory to fraud," Brad shouted back. Darius struggled to his feet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his own phone. He stared at the black screen. "I am going to call her," he muttered. "I am going to tell her to stop." He tapped the screen violently. But his fingers were clumsy and the rage was boiling over. He couldn't get the signal. Or maybe he realized deep down that there was nobody on the other end who cared anymore. "I hate her!" Darius screamed at the night sky. He hurled his phone with all his strength. It smashed against the brick retaining wall of the patio. The glass shattered. The device fell into the rose bushes dead. There, Darius panted, staring at the broken pieces. Problem solved. No phone, no emails. She doesn't exist. Brad looked at the broken phone, then at his brother-in-law. "Breaking your phone doesn't stop the FBI, Darius," Brad said coldly. "It just makes it harder for you to call a bail bondsman." Lucille stepped forward, clutching her pearls. "Bradley, do not speak to him like that. He is upset. We just need to sleep on it. In the morning, we will go to the bank. We will talk to the manager. I know Mr. Davidson. He will clear this up. It is just a misunderstanding. Nia has clearly had a mental breakdown. We will get her help, and then we will take control of the accounts ourselves." Brad looked at Lucille with a mixture of awe and horror. The level of delusion was breathtaking. They truly believed that their social standing superseded the law. They believed that because they were the Brooks family, reality would bend to their will. "I am going home," Brad said abruptly. "You cannot leave us," Vanessa cried out. "My car is blocked in." "Then walk," Brad said. "Or ask your boyfriend to pick you up." "Oh, wait." Darius just chased him off. Brad turned and began walking toward the gate, using his flashlight to navigate the dark path. Bradley, Lucille shrieked. "If you walk out that gate, you are betraying this family." Brad stopped. He turned back one last time. The beam of his flashlight caught them, Darius, on his knees in the grass. Vanessa shivering in her inappropriate dress, Lucille standing tall in her kingdom of dirt. I am not betraying the family, Lucille. Brad said, his voice sad and final. I am just stepping out of the picture. He turned and walked away into the darkness, leaving them alone with the silence, the crickets, and the looming realization that the sun was going to rise on a very different world. Back in my hotel room, I watched the digital clock flip to midnight. The day was over. Darius's birthday was officially finished. But my work was just beginning. I pulled the duvet up to my chin, feeling the crisp, clean sheets of the hotel bed. I closed my eyes and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the righteous. Because I knew that at 8 a.m. sharp, I had a date with a locksmith and a team of private security guards. The eviction notice gave them until noon. But I wasn't going to wait until noon to secure my assets. I was going to be there when they woke up. I wanted to see their faces when the sun rose and revealed that the castle they lived in was made of glass, and I was holding the hammer. The digital clock on the dashboard of my Porsche read midnight exactly as I turned the corner onto Skyline Drive. Cinderella had to leave the ball at midnight, but I was returning to the castle to burn it down. The streetlights flickered over the leather interior of the car as I navigated the winding roads up to the estate. My heart was beating with a slow, steady rhythm. It was the rhythm of a predator, not prey. When I pulled up to the gate of the mansion, the scene was unrecognizable from the pristine white paradise I had left 4 hours ago. The massive iron gates were left wide open, a clear sign that the security detail had abandoned their post when the payment failed to process. I drove through slowly, my headlights cutting through the darkness like twin blades. The driveway was littered with debris. Expensive linen napkins blew across the pavement like tumbleweeds. An overturned tray of shrimp cocktail lay rotting near the fountain, the ice melted into a puddle of warm water. It looked less like a birthday party and more like the aftermath of a riot. And in a way, it was. It was a riot of entitlement colliding with reality. I parked the Porsche right in front of the double oak doors blocking the entrance. I stepped out into the cool night air. The silence of the hills was broken by the sound of voices coming from inside the house. Screaming voices. I walked up the stone steps, my heels clicking against the pavement. I did not rush. I took my time. I wanted to savor this. For 10 years, I had walked into this house with a knot in my stomach, wondering what mood Darius would be in, wondering if Lucille would criticize my outfit, wondering if I had done enough to earn their love. Tonight, I walked in with my head high, knowing that I owned the very ground they were standing on. I pushed open the front door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. They were too busy fighting to worry about safety. The foyer was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight streaming through the high windows, but I could hear them clearly in the living room. You are useless, Vanessa, Lucille's voice screeched, echoing off the marble floors. You said you had money. You said you could handle it. Now look at us. We are sitting in the dark like animals. Don't yell at me, Vanessa screamed back. Her voice sounded hysterical. It is not my fault Nia is a psychopath. It is Darius's fault. He is the one who couldn't control his wife. Shut up! Both of you shut up! Darius roared. There was the sound of glass shattering. Another drink thrown against the wall. She will come back. She has to come back. She loves me. She is just trying to teach me a lesson. I stopped in the hallway just out of sight. I listened to them tearing each other apart. It was fascinating. Without me there to absorb their toxicity, they had turned on each other. I was the buffer, and without the buffer, they were cannibalizing themselves. I reached out to the wall panel on my right. This was the master control for the smart home system, a system I had installed, a system I paid for, a system that had a backup battery that they were too stupid to know about. I pressed the button labeled Full Illumination. The house exploded with light. The crystal chandelier in the foyer blazed to life. The recessed lighting in the living room flooded the space with clinical brightness. The sudden shift from darkness to blinding light made them all scream. I walked into the living room. The scene was pathetic. Darius was slumped on the white sofa, his expensive suit stained with wine and sweat, his tie undone. Lucille was sitting in the armchair, still clutching her purse like a life raft, her makeup smeared. Vanessa was pacing near the fireplace barefoot, holding a bottle of champagne that she must have scavenged from the garden. They all froze when they saw me. They blinked in the harsh light, shielding their eyes like vampires caught in the sun. Darius scrambled to stand up, but he swayed and fell back onto the cushions. "You came back. I told you. I told them you would come back." He tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. The relief on his face was palpable. He thought the nightmare was over. He thought the ATM had returned to dispense cash and forgiveness. Lucille straightened up, smoothing her dress. "Well, it is about time. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this has been? The neighbors saw the police. You have a lot of explaining to do, young lady." I said nothing. I just stood there in the center of the room looking at them. I looked at the wine stain on the rug. I looked at the broken glass near the fireplace. I looked at the sheer disarray of the life I had curated for them. Vanessa stepped forward, trying to regain her composure. She tossed her hair back, attempting to look superior even though she was barefoot and broke. "You think you are so smart, don't you?" Vanessa sneered. "Freezing the accounts, ruining the party. You are childish, Nia. Darius is going to divorce you for this. And then you will have nothing." I finally moved. I walked over to the coffee table. It was covered in empty glasses and crumpled napkins. I cleared a space with my hand, sweeping the trash onto the floor with a loud crash. Darius flinched. Lucille gasped. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the heavy set of keys to the mansion. The keys to the front gate. The keys to the pool house. The keys to the wine cellar. I dropped them onto the glass table. The sound was heavy and final. Clack. "I am not here to explain myself. Lucille," I said, my voice calm and steady, "and I am not here to be divorced." "Vanessa?" Darius looked at the keys, then up at me. His eyes were bloodshot, full of confusion and fear. "Then why are you here if you are not here to fix this? Why did you come back?" I walked over to the fireplace. Above the mantel hung a massive portrait of Darius that I had commissioned for his 35th birthday. He looked powerful, regal, and successful in the painting. It was a lie. Paint on canvas, just like him. I turned to face them. "I came back because I forgot something I said." Darius let out a breathy laugh. "See, I knew it. What did you forget, baby? Your charger, your makeup bag. Just tell me and I will get it. We can talk about this. We can fix this. Just unfreeze the cards and we can go to bed." I shook my head slowly. "No, Darius. I didn't forget a charger." I walked closer to him until I was standing right over him. The smell of stale vodka was overpowering. "I forgot to tell you that the eviction notice Brad emailed you isn't just a threat. It is a promise." Darius's face fell. "What?" "And I came back to ensure that the property is vacated according to the terms of the lease," I continued, "which states that in the event of a default, the landlord has the right to inspect the premises and secure all valuable assets." Lucille stood up, her fingers shaking as she pointed at me. "You cannot evict us. This is our home. My grandchildren have memories here. This is a corporate asset, Lucille," I corrected her. "And since Shadow Oak Holdings is the owner, and I am the majority shareholder, this is my asset, and frankly, you are damaging it." I looked at the wine stain on the sofa. "That sofa cost $12,000. I will be deducting that from your security deposit." "Oh wait, you didn't pay a security deposit. I paid that too." "Nia, please," Darius begged, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "Don't do this. Where are we supposed to go?" "It is midnight. That sounds like a tenant problem, not a landlord problem," I said. Vanessa laughed, a shrill, desperate sound. "You are bluffing. You can't just kick us out. We have rights. We have squatters' rights or something." I smiled at her. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a sheep that had wandered away from the herd. Actually, Vanessa, since this is a commercial lease, and you are not listed as tenants but as guests of the defaulting officer, you have no rights. In fact, legally speaking, you are trespassing right now. I checked my watch. I have a security team arriving in 6 hours to change the locks, I said. I suggest you start packing. And by packing, I mean your clothes and your personal toiletries. The furniture stays, the art stays, the electronics stay. Darius stared at me, his mouth open. You are taking everything. I am taking back what is mine, I said. I turned to walk away, but I stopped at the door. I looked back at the three of them, the mother who despised me, the husband who used me, the ex-wife who mocked me. They looked small. They looked ordinary. And one more thing, I said. Darius looked up, hope flickering in his eyes one last time. Yes, the Porsche in the driveway, I said, pointing to the door. It is leased under the company name, too. I will be taking that with me when I leave. The keys to your Mercedes are on the counter. Oh, wait! The repo man took the Mercedes an hour ago, didn't he? I saw the tow truck on my way up. Darius put his head in his hands and began to sob. It was a deep, ugly sound of defeat. I walked out of the living room and into the foyer. I didn't look back. I grabbed the spare set of keys I had kept for myself. I walked out the front door and down the steps. The night air felt cleaner now. The heavy weight of their expectations was gone. I got back into my Porsche and started the engine. As I reversed down the driveway, I looked up at the house one last time. The lights were still blazing. I could see their silhouettes moving frantically in the window. They were finally realizing that the party was over. The music had stopped, and the bill had come due. I shifted gears and drove into the night. I had a busy morning ahead of me, but first I was going to sleep. For the first time in 10 years, I was going to sleep without worrying about keeping the lights on for people who preferred to leave me in the dark. I came back to take what was mine. And trust me, the list was much longer than they thought. Where did you go, Nia? You embarrassed me in front of the entire city. Darius was pacing around the glass coffee table like a caged animal. His voice boomed off the high ceilings of the living room, but it lacked the authority he thought he possessed. He was trying to regain control of a situation that had spiraled completely out of his hands. I stood perfectly still in the center of the room. I let him yell. I let him vent. I let him burn through the last of his adrenaline. It was fascinating to watch. He was grieving the death of his ego, and he did not even know it yet. You walk out of my birthday party. You freeze the cards. You cut off the power. And now you just stroll back in here at midnight like nothing happened. Who do you think you are? I am the person holding the pen, Darius, I said softly. He stopped pacing. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. What is that supposed to mean? I reached into my bag. The leather creaked in the silence of the room. I pulled out a blue document folder. It was not thick. It did not need to be. It contained only 4 pages. But those 4 pages were heavier than the foundation of this house. I placed the folder on the table right next to the keys I had just dropped. Sit down, Darius. I am not sitting down. You need to apologize to my mother. Look at her. She is a wreck. Lucille was sitting on the sofa clutching a throw pillow, glaring at me with pure hatred. You are a monster, Nia. A vindictive, jealous monster. I ignored her. I tapped the blue folder with my index finger. I said, sit down, Darius. Unless you want to have this conversation standing up, which I would not recommend, because your knees are about to get very weak. Something in my tone finally penetrated his drunken haze. He looked at the folder, then at me. He slowly sank onto the edge of the sofa next to his mother. Vanessa hovered behind them, looking over his shoulder, her eyes darting nervously. What is this? Darius asked, reaching for the folder. It is a memory test, I said. Do you remember 2 years ago, the Skyline project? Darius froze. His hand hovered over the paper. Of course I remember. It was my biggest success. I saved that project from bankruptcy. I found an angel investor at the last minute who injected $2 million when the bank pulled the loan. Correct, I said. You found an angel investor. Shadow Oak Holdings, a private equity firm based in Delaware. You never met the owner. You only dealt with their lawyers. You signed the papers, took the money, and patted yourself on the back for being a genius businessman. So what? Darius snapped. I paid them back. The project is finished. You paid back the principal, I corrected him, but you did not read the fine print regarding the collateral cross-default clauses. I began to walk slowly around the sofa. I moved with deliberate precision, circling them like a shark circling a life raft. The orbit was designed to make them uncomfortable, to make them feel surrounded even though I was just one woman. Open it, Darius. Read the signature line on the lender side. Darius flipped the folder open. He stared at the document. It was a promissory note and a deed of trust. He scanned the pages, his eyes moving frantically. Shadow Oak Holdings, he muttered. Authorized signatory. He stopped. He blinked. He brought the paper closer to his face, as if the words would change if he looked harder. Nia Brooks, he whispered. Vanessa gasped. No way. Darius looked up at me, his face draining of all color. You are Shadow Oak Holdings. I stopped walking behind the sofa. I placed my hands on the backrest right between Darius and Lucille. I leaned in close. Surprise, I whispered. You loaned me the $2 million, Darius stammered. But where did you get that kind of money? You are just an accountant. I am a forensic accountant, Darius, I said, my voice sharp. And I am also a very successful investor. While you were buying fake watches and leasing cars to impress people who do not care about you, I was buying cryptocurrency in 2015. I was investing in tech startups. I was building a fortune that I kept separate because I knew deep down that you would spend it all on Vanessa if you knew it existed. Darius looked like he had been slapped. So you own the debt, he said. So what? I have been making the payments. The project is fine. I resumed my slow circle around the room. Yes, you have been making the payments. Until tonight. I stopped in front of him. The loan agreement has a very specific clause regarding the collateral. To secure the $2 million, you put up this house as collateral. You signed a deed of trust that gives Shadow Oak Holdings me the right to foreclose immediately if a payment is missed or if the borrower becomes insolvent. I haven't missed a payment, Darius argued. The auto-pay is set for the 15th of every month. That is today. Exactly, I said. The 15th. At midnight. I pointed to the grandfather clock in the corner. It was 12:15 a.m. The auto draft attempted to pull the mortgage payment from your operating account 15 minutes ago, I explained. But since I froze all your accounts at 9 p.m., due to suspicious activity, the payment bounced. Darius stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. And according to Clause 4, Section B of the contract, you signed a missed payment due to insufficient funds triggers an immediate default. There is no grace period for commercial loans of this nature. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. You are in default, Darius, and I am accelerating the loan. I am calling in the full balance. $2 million, payable now. I do not have $2 million, Darius whispered. You know I don't. You froze the accounts. Then I am exercising my right to the collateral, I said simply. I am foreclosing on this house. Lucille let out a strangled cry. You cannot do that. This is my home. I picked out these curtains. It is a building. Lucille, I said, without looking at her. And it now belongs to me. Not as your daughter-in-law, but as the bank. And the bank does not care about your curtains. Darius stood up. He was shaking. This is entrapment. You set me up. You froze the money so the payment would bounce so you could steal my house. I did not steal anything, Darius, I replied calmly. I protected my investment. You are the one who spent company money on gambling debts. You are the one who violated your fiduciary duties. I just pulled the trigger before you could crash the whole car. I picked up the folder from his lap. You have 12 hours, I said. By noon tomorrow, I want this house empty. If you are not gone, the sheriff comes. And since Brad has already left, I suggest you find a new lawyer. Although good luck finding one who will take a case against a foreclosure document that is this airtight. Darius looked at the paper, then at me. The realization hit him. He wasn't just losing his wife. He wasn't just losing his money. He was losing his identity. He was a king without a castle. Lucille suddenly stood up. She clutched her chest with both hands, her face twisted into a mask of exaggerated agony. "Oh," she wailed. "Oh, my heart! I cannot breathe! Darius! My heart!" She collapsed onto the sofa. It was a terrible performance. She made sure to land on the soft cushions, and she adjusted her skirt as she fell. "Mom!" Darius screamed. "Mom! Nia, look what you did! You gave her a heart attack!" Vanessa rushed to her side, fanning her with a dirty napkin. Mrs. Brooks, stay with us." I watched them. I did not move. I did not reach for my phone. I simply folded my arms and watched the show. "Call 911, Darius yelled at me. "Don't just stand there, call an ambulance." I looked at Lucille. Her eyelids were fluttering, but her color was fine. Her breathing was regular. "She is not having a heart attack, Darius," I said dryly. "She is having a panic attack because she realized she has to move into a condo." "You heartless witch," Darius spat. "If she dies, it is on you." "If she was dying, I said she would have dropped the purse. Look at her hand." They looked. Lucille was gripping her Louis Vuitton bag with a strength that defied death. Lucille's eyes snapped open. She glared at me. "I hate you," she hissed, dropping the act instantly. "The feeling is entirely mutual." "Lucille," I replied. I walked to the door. "You have the night to pack," I said. "Use it wisely. And Darius, do not try to take the art off the walls. It is inventoried in the loan agreement. If a single painting is missing, I will add theft to the list of charges I am filing tomorrow." I stepped out into the hallway. Behind me, the sound of their despair was music. Darius was crying again. Vanessa was arguing with Lucille about who would get the guest bedroom at her sister's house. I walked out to the patio. The night air was cool. I looked out over the city. I had stripped them of their money. I had stripped them of their home. But I wasn't done. There was one more thing they valued more than money or property: their reputation. And tomorrow, when the news broke that the prominent Darius Brooks had been evicted by his own wife for fraud, the court of public opinion would be far more brutal than any judge. I took a deep breath. The legal weapon had been fired. The smoke was clearing, and I was the only one left standing. I stood on the patio with the cool night air brushing against my face, listening to the silence I had created. But the silence did not last long. From inside the house, above the sound of Darius sobbing and Vanessa arguing, I heard a sound that stopped my heart cold. It was the soft, rhythmic thud of small feet running down the grand staircase. I turned around instantly. Through the French doors I saw her, Maya. She was 12 years old, but in her oversized pink pajamas and clutching the worn-out teddy bear I had bought her for her 5th birthday, she looked much younger. She stood at the bottom of the stairs, her hair messy from sleep, her eyes wide with terror. She looked at the wreckage of the living room. She looked at her father, slumped and smelling of vodka. She looked at her mother, Vanessa, whose face was twisted in an ugly snarl of greed and panic. And then she saw me. "Mama Nia," she whispered. The sound of that name broke through the armor I had spent the last 4 hours constructing. To everyone else in this room, I was the bank. I was the villain. I was the foreclosure agent. But to Maya, I was the one who made the pancakes. I was the one who helped with the science fair projects. I was the one who sat by her bed when she had the flu while Vanessa was out networking at clubs. Maya did not run to Vanessa. She did not run to Darius. She sprinted across the marble floor, dodging the broken glass and the spilled wine, and threw herself into my arms. I caught her instinctively. I dropped the keys I was holding and wrapped my arms around her small, trembling frame. She buried her face in my neck, her tears hot against my skin. "I am scared, Mama Nia," she sobbed. Daddy was screaming. He threw the phone. I heard glass breaking. "Is he going to break me too?" I held her tighter, glaring at Darius over the top of her head. He looked up, his eyes hazy, realizing for the first time that his daughter was witnessing his collapse. "No, baby," I said, stroking her hair. "Nobody is going to break you. I am here." "Get your hands off her!" Vanessa lunged forward like a striking cobra. She grabbed Maya's arm and yanked her away from me with such force that Maya cried out in pain. "Ow, Mom, you are hurting me," Maya screamed, trying to pull back toward me. Vanessa did not let go. She dragged the child to her side, wrapping a possessive arm around her shoulders. It wasn't a hug, it was a clamp. It was a hostage situation. "She is my daughter, Nia." Vanessa hissed, her eyes manic. "You don't get to touch her. You are nothing to her. You are just the stepmom. You are the woman kicking us out on the street. Do not try to turn her against me." Maya struggled in her mother's grip. "I want to go with Nia. Let me go." "Shut up," Maya, Vanessa shouted, shaking the girl. "You don't know what you are saying. This woman is trying to destroy our family. She is the reason we have to leave. She is the bad guy." I watched Maya shrink into herself at her mother's anger. I watched the fear return to her eyes, and a cold, dark rage settled in my stomach. I had been willing to show mercy regarding the furniture. I had been willing to give them time to pack. But hurting the child, that was a declaration of total war. I took a step forward. My heels clicked on the floor, sounding like gunshots in the quiet room. "Let her go, Vanessa," I said. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of a tidal wave. "Make me," Vanessa spat. "She is my property. I gave birth to her. You have no rights here. You are just a barren woman playing house with my leftovers." Darius looked up, seemingly sobered by the cruelty of her words. "Vanessa, stop," he muttered. "Don't talk about that." I ignored the insult. It didn't hurt me anymore, because I knew the truth. Biology makes you a mother, but presence makes you a parent. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "You are right, Vanessa," I said. "I am not her biological mother. I have no legal rights to custody, currently." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. "Currently, you will never have custody. No judge would give a child to a woman who evicts her own husband." I tapped the screen of my phone. I brought up the app linked to the home security system, specifically the internal cameras that I had installed 3 months ago when items started going missing from the house. "I think a judge would be very interested in what I have on this phone," I said. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa narrowed her eyes. "I tapped a video file dated 2 weeks ago. I turned the screen so they could all see it. The video showed the living room. The timestamp was 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. In the video, Vanessa was dressed in a tight sequined dress. She was rushing out the door. Maya was sitting on the sofa doing homework. "Bye, sweetie," video, Vanessa said. "Mommy has a business meeting. I will be back late." "Wait," video, Maya said. "I am hungry, and I don't feel good. My head hurts." "There is cereal in the pantry," Vanessa said, opening the door. "Deal with it. I am late." Vanessa walked out. The camera continued to roll. It showed Maya crying on the sofa. It showed her curling up in a ball. It showed her vomiting on the rug at midnight. It showed her lying there alone, feverish, until I came home from a business trip at 2 a.m. and found her. I remembered that night. I remembered rushing her to the emergency room. Vanessa didn't come home until the next morning. She told Darius she had been at a charity gala. I swiped to the next video. This one was from last Friday. Vanessa was in the kitchen on the phone. "Yeah, I can make the poker game," she was saying. "No, I don't have a sitter. I will just lock her in her room. She has an iPad. She will be fine. Just deal me in." I looked at Vanessa. Her face had gone pale white. Her grip on Maya loosened. "And here is my favorite," I said, swiping to a third video. "This is a recording of you sitting in your car in the driveway smoking something that definitely is not a cigarette while Maya is knocking on the window asking you to sign her permission slip. You didn't even roll down the window, Vanessa. You just turned up the music." Darius stood up. He walked over to me and stared at the phone screen. He watched the video of his ex-wife ignoring their daughter to get high in a Range Rover he paid for. "You told me you quit smoking," Darius whispered. "You told me you were going to therapy." "She lied to you, Darius," I said. "Just like she lied about the tuition. Just like she lied about the debt." Vanessa released Maya completely. She stepped back, looking cornered. "That is illegal," she shrieked. "You cannot record me in my own home. That is a violation of privacy. It is not your home, Vanessa, I reminded her. It is my house, and those cameras are clearly marked for security purposes. You consented to them when you started sleeping on my guest sofa 3 months ago. Maya ran back to me. This time, Vanessa didn't stop her. I wrapped my arm around the girl, shielding her from the toxicity radiating from her biological parents. Suddenly, a voice spoke from the hallway entrance. Actually, Vanessa, under California law, since there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in common areas like the living room and kitchen, those recordings are perfectly admissible in family court. We all turned. Brad was standing there. He hadn't left, or he had come back. He looked tired, his tie loosened, leaning against the doorframe with a look of profound sadness. Brad Lucille gasped. You came back! Thank God! Tell her she can't use those videos. You are a lawyer. Brad walked into the room. He didn't look at Lucille. He looked at Maya, who was hiding her face in my coat. I came back because I saw the lights go on, Brad said quietly. And because I didn't trust you people to keep Maya safe. He turned to Vanessa. I am a corporate lawyer, not a family law attorney, Brad said. But I know enough to tell you that what Nia just showed us constitutes gross negligence and child endangerment. Leaving a minor alone to gamble drug use in the presence of a child, emotional neglect. He shook his head. Vanessa, if Nia takes that to a judge, you won't just lose custody, you will lose visitation. You will be lucky if you don't face criminal charges. Vanessa began to cry, but these weren't the fake tears she used to manipulate Darius. These were tears of genuine terror. Darius, do something, she pleaded. She is trying to steal our daughter. Darius looked at the phone in my hand. Then he looked at Maya clinging to me. He looked at the way Maya flinched when Vanessa yelled. He looked at the way she relaxed when I held her. For a moment I saw a flicker of the man I used to love. The man who wanted to be a good father. She is not stealing her, Vanessa. Darius said, his voice breaking. Maya ran to her. Darius sat back down on the sofa, putting his head in his hands. We failed her. We both failed her. I looked at Brad. Brad, I said. Can you take Maya to your house tonight? Kayla is there. She will be safe. Brad nodded. Of course. Kayla is already setting up the spare room. She has been texting me non-stop. I knelt down in front of Maya. I wiped the tears from her cheeks. Baby, I need you to go with Uncle Brad, okay? I said softly. He is going to take you to Auntie Kayla's house. They have cookies and that big dog you like. You are going to have a sleepover. Maya gripped my sleeve. Are you coming? I have to finish cleaning up a mess here, I said. But I promise you I will come see you tomorrow. And nobody is going to hurt you. Nobody is going to leave you alone again. Maya looked at Vanessa, who was sobbing silently in the corner. Then she looked at Darius, who couldn't even meet her eyes. Okay, Mama Nia, she whispered. She let go of me and walked over to Brad. Brad took her hand gently. Come on, kiddo, Brad said. Let's get out of here. They walked toward the door. Vanessa made a movement as if to stop them, but I stepped in her path. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. I held up the phone with the video paused on the screen. She froze. She knew. One more step, one more word, and I would press send on an email to Child Protective Services. She stayed put. I watched Brad and Maya disappear into the night. My heart ached at the sight of her small figure walking away, but I knew she was safe. Safer than she had ever been in this house of cards. I turned back to the 3 adults left in the room. The atmosphere had shifted from chaotic to funereal. The reality of what they had lost, not just the money, not just the house, but the trust of an innocent child, was finally sinking in. You have no shame, Lucille muttered from the sofa, turning a child against her mother. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. I didn't turn her, Lucille. I just turned on the lights. Maya saw the truth. And now so do the rest of you. I walked over to the table and picked up my keys. The security team arrives at 6 a.m., I reminded them. If I were you, I would spend less time judging me and more time packing. Because when the sun comes up, this door locks. And it doesn't open again for anyone with the last name Brooks. I headed for the door. I was exhausted. My bones ached. But my spirit was soaring. I had saved the money, I had saved the house, and tonight I had saved the girl. The only thing left to do was to bury the marriage. And I had a shovel in the trunk of my Porsche ready for tomorrow morning. The silence in the living room after Brad and Maya left was heavy enough to crush bones. The front door clicked shut, and the sound echoed like a gavel striking a sounding block. It was just the 3 of us now. The holy trinity of dysfunction. Me the bank, Darius the debtor, and Vanessa the liability. Vanessa was frantically typing on her phone, her acrylic nails clicking against the screen with a manic rhythm. She was not looking at Darius. She was not offering comfort to the man whose life she had just helped dismantle. She was looking for an exit strategy. Darius sat with his head in his hands, staring at the spot on the rug where his daughter had stood moments ago. He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "She is gone," Darius whispered. "My daughter is gone. My house is gone. My money is gone." He looked at Vanessa. "But at least I have you, Ness. We can fix this. We can start over. We have done it before. Remember when we were 22? We lived in that studio apartment. We can do it again." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the 3 years of gaslighting. I remembered the lonely nights while he was comforting her. I remembered the disrespect. I walked over to the armchair and sat down, crossing my legs. I smoothed the fabric of my dress. "She is not going to the studio apartment with you, Darius," I said quietly. Vanessa stopped typing. She froze. Darius looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Of course she is. She is my family. She is the mother of my child." I shook my head slowly, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. "She is the mother of your child, yes, but she is also the reason you lost the Midtown development bid last month." The room went dead silent. The Midtown bid was the biggest contract of Darius's career. It would have secured his company for the next decade. He had worked on the proposal for 6 months. He had locked the blueprints in his safe. He had sworn everyone to secrecy. And yet 48 hours before the deadline, his biggest rival, Marcus Sterling, had submitted a bid that undercut Darius by exactly 1%. It was a mathematical impossibility, unless someone had seen the numbers. Darius stood up slowly. "What did you say?" "I said she is the reason you lost the bid," I repeated. I looked at Vanessa. Her face was a mask of pure terror. She took a step back toward the French doors. "You were wondering how Marcus Sterling got those numbers." I continued, my voice steady and surgical. "You fired your project manager because you thought he leaked them. You sued your architect. You tore your office apart looking for bugs." I pulled up a new file on my phone. I didn't turn the screen around this time. I just read from it. "On October 14th at 2 a.m. while you were asleep, the security logs show that the safe in your home office was opened. The combination used was yours. But the biometric scan wasn't yours. It was bypassed using the emergency key, the key you keep in your bedside drawer." I looked at Darius. "Who was sleeping in your bed that night, Darius?" "I was in New York for a conference." Darius turned to Vanessa. He looked like a man watching a car crash in slow motion. "You were there," Darius whispered. "You said you were afraid to sleep alone because of the storm. You stayed over." Vanessa shook her head frantically. "Number, he is lying. She is lying. Darius, don't listen to her. She is trying to divide us." I continued reading. At 2:15 a.m. 3 photos were uploaded from an iPhone 14 Pro Max to a Dropbox folder shared with an email address. The email address is mrsterling@sterlingcorp.com. Darius flinched as if I had struck him. Marcus Sterling, his sworn enemy. The man who had humiliated him in the press. The man who was currently building the skyscraper that Darius was supposed to build. "You sent him my plans?" Darius asked, his voice trembling. "You sent Marcus my numbers?" Vanessa backed up until she hit the glass of the patio doors. Her eyes were darting around the room looking for an escape. "He paid me!" Vanessa screamed suddenly. She dropped the act. The mask of the victim shattered, revealing the ugly, desperate greed underneath. "He offered me $50,000 for the files I needed, the money I had debts." "Darius, you weren't giving me enough cash. You were being stingy." "Stingy?" Darius roared. "I gave you everything. I stole from my wife for you. I embezzled from my company for you. I risked prison for you." "And it wasn't enough," Vanessa yelled back. You are a loser, Darius. You always have been. You play at being a big shot, but Nia pays for everything. Marcus is a real man. Marcus has his own money. Marcus doesn't need his wife's permission to buy a watch. The words hung in the air, toxic and irreversible. Darius stood there swaying slightly. The woman he had put on a pedestal, the woman he had asked me to step aside for, had just gutted him. She hadn't just cheated on him emotionally, she had sold his dreams for 50 grand to cover a gambling debt. I watched the realization wash over him. It was the final fracture. The delusion that had sustained him, the idea that he and Vanessa were the true power couple and I was just the financier, crumbled into dust. Suddenly, beams of bright white light cut through the darkness of the garden. A car was pulling up the long driveway. It wasn't a police car. It was a sleek black Bentley SUV. Vanessa's face lit up. She turned and fumbled with the lock on the French doors. "He is here," she said, panting. "He is here to pick me up." "Who is here?" Darius asked, his voice dangerous and low. "Marcus." Vanessa spat. "I texted him while you were crying over your little eviction notice. I told him I was done with you. I told him I had more files he might be interested in." She threw the door open and ran out onto the patio. "Marcus," she screamed, waving her arms. "Marcus, I am here." Darius made a sound that was not human. It was a primal roar of pure, unadulterated rage. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at his mother. He just launched himself toward the door. "Darius, no," Lucille cried out from the sofa. But it was too late. Darius sprinted across the lawn toward the driveway. I stood up and walked calmly to the window. I had a front row seat to the destruction. The Bentley had stopped near the fountain. The driver's door opened, and a tall man in a gray suit stepped out. It was Marcus Sterling. He looked immaculate, arrogant, and completely out of place in the chaos of the Brooks estate. Vanessa was running toward him, stumbling in the grass. "Get me out of here," she yelled. "He is crazy." Darius collided with Marcus just as Vanessa reached the car. He didn't throw a punch like a boxer, he attacked like a wild animal. He tackled Marcus onto the gravel driveway. "You stole my life!" Darius screamed, punching Marcus in the face. "You stole my contract. You stole my wife." Marcus, who was younger and fitter, managed to shove Darius off. He landed a solid kick to Darius's ribs. Darius groaned and rolled over, coughing. "You gave it away, Brooks." Marcus laughed, wiping blood from his lip. "You were too stupid to keep your house in order. Do not blame me because your ex-wife likes winners." Darius scrambled to his feet. He grabbed a heavy stone garden statue, a cupid that Lucille adored, and raised it over his head. He was going to kill him. I could see it in his eyes. He had lost everything, and he had nothing left to lose. Darius put it down. Vanessa shrieked. Darius took a step forward, the statue poised to crush Marcus's skull. Then the world turned red and blue. Sirens wailed, cutting through the night air like a knife. 3 police cruisers drifted around the corner of the driveway, tires screeching. They had been patrolling the neighborhood because of the earlier disturbance at the party, and my security team had called them the moment Darius ran out the door. "Drop the weapon!" A frantic voice amplified by a loudspeaker boomed. "Drop it now!" Darius froze. He looked at the statue in his hands. He looked at Marcus, who was smirking on the ground. He looked at Vanessa, who was cowering behind the Bentley. "Police, get on the ground." Darius turned and looked back at the house. He looked right at me. I was standing in the window, bathed in the warm light of the living room, untouchable. He realized then that there was no way out. There was no check I could write to fix this. There was no contract Brad could negotiate. He dropped the statue. It shattered on the pavement. He fell to his knees, putting his hands behind his head. I watched as the officers swarmed him. I watched as they handcuffed him face down in the gravel of the home he no longer owned. I watched as they questioned Marcus and Vanessa. I turned away from the window. It was done. The golden child had fallen. The king was in chains, and the queen mother was sobbing on my sofa. I walked over to Lucille. She was staring at the wall, catatonic. Your ride is here, Lucille, I said gently. I believe the officers will want a statement from you regarding the assault, and probably about the foundation funds, too. I picked up my purse. I walked to the front door, stepping out into the cool night air. The police were busy with Darius. Vanessa was trying to explain to an officer why she was in a stranger's car. I walked past them all. I walked to my Porsche. One of the officers recognized me. Mrs. Brooks, do you want to make a statement? I lowered my sunglasses even though it was night. No, officer, I said. I am just the landlord. I was just checking on the property. It seems the tenants caused quite a disturbance. I got into my car. I didn't look back at Darius as they shoved him into the back of the cruiser. I didn't look back at Vanessa as they asked for her ID and ran her name, likely finding the warrants for her unpaid debts. I started the engine and drove away. The rearview mirror was empty of them. Finally, I was alone. And for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't lonely. It was expensive. It was peaceful. And it was all mine. The world outside the window looked tilted. It was disorienting. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers bounced off the white pillars of the mansion, creating a strobe effect that made everything look like a fractured nightmare. From my vantage point in the living room, I watched the scene unfold with the detached clinical precision of a surgeon watching a patient flatline. Darius was face down in the gravel. The expensive Tom Ford suit I had bought him was now ruined, covered in dust and dirt. His hands were behind his head, fingers interlaced. Marcus Sterling, the man Darius had attacked, was standing by his Bentley, dabbing a handkerchief to his bloody lip. He looked annoyed but not fearful. He looked like a man who knew the law was on his side. One of the officers, a burly man with a sergeant's stripes on his sleeve, hauled Darius to his knees. You are making a mistake, Darius spit out gravel falling from his chin. He attacked me. He is sleeping with my wife. I was defending my home. The sergeant didn't blink. He didn't look impressed by the mansion or the luxury cars. He looked tired. Mr. Brooks, you are not being detained for assault, the sergeant said. Although we can certainly add that to the list if Mr. Sterling wants to press charges. Darius blinked, confused. Then why are you arresting me? This is a domestic dispute. You can't arrest me for yelling at my family. The sergeant reached into his vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a citation. It was a warrant. Darius Brooks, I have a federal warrant for your arrest issued by the district attorney's office in cooperation with the Internal Revenue Service. The air seemed to leave the driveway. Even Vanessa, who was cowering behind Marcus's car, stopped crying to listen. The IRS. Darius laughed. It was a high, hysterical sound. You are crazy. My taxes are perfect. My wife is an accountant. She handles everything. He looked up at the house. He saw me standing in the window. Nia, he screamed. Nia, come out here. Tell them. Tell them you filed the returns. Tell them everything is clean. I didn't move. I took a sip of water from the glass I was holding. I watched as the sergeant shook his head. Actually, Mr. Brooks, your wife is the reason we are here. Darius went still. 6 months ago I stopped signing our joint tax returns. It was a quiet decision. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a scene. I simply sat at my desk in late April, looked at the numbers Darius had provided for his business expenses, and realized I was looking at a crime scene. He had listed Vanessa's gambling debts as contractor fees. He had listed the lease on her Range Rover as company transport. He had listed the tuition for a school Maya didn't attend as educational grants. If I had signed those papers, I would have been complicit. I would have been a co-conspirator. And when the audit inevitably came, I would have gone to federal prison right alongside him. I worked too hard for my license to trade it for an orange jumpsuit, so I filed married filing separately. And then I filled out IRS Form 211, the application for award for original information. I became a whistleblower against my own husband. I submitted the real ledgers. I submitted the emails where he instructed his secretary to alter the dates on invoices. I submitted the bank transfers to Malta. I saved myself, and in doing so, I condemned him. Back in the driveway, the sergeant was explaining this to Darius, though in simpler terms. We received a comprehensive report regarding structured deposits to offshore accounts and falsified deductions, the sergeant said. The warrant charges you with 4 counts of tax evasion, 2 counts of wire fraud, and 1 count of money laundering. No, Darius whispered. No, Nia wouldn't do that. She loves me. She protects me. Lucille came running out the front door. She had finally snapped out of her shock. She rushed down the steps, her heels clicking frantically. Officer, stop this immediately. Do you know who we are? We are the Brooks family. We are pillars of this community. I am the chairwoman of the Heritage Foundation. The sergeant looked at Lucille with mild irritation. Ma'am, step back. You cannot arrest my son, Lucille shrieked. He is a businessman. He is stressed. This is a misunderstanding. Call the mayor. I know the mayor. Lucille, the sergeant said, his voice dropping an octave. Unless you want to be questioned about your role in the Brooks Heritage Foundation's misuse of charitable funds, I suggest you step back onto the porch. We have that file too. Lucille froze mid-step. Her mouth snapped shut. The threat was precise and effective. She knew exactly what was in the Foundation's books because she was the one spending the money. She retreated backward, clutching her chest, leaving her son alone in the gravel. Darius looked around. He looked at his mother, who was backing away. He looked at Vanessa, who was already getting into Marcus Sterling's car, desperate to flee the scene before they ran her name too. Wait! Darius yelled as Marcus started the engine. Vanessa! Don't leave me! Vanessa didn't even look at him. She stared straight ahead as the Bentley reversed and sped down the driveway, leaving Darius in a cloud of dust. The sergeant pulled Darius to his feet. He spun him around. Darius Brooks, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The metallic click of the handcuffs was loud in the night air. It was a sound of finality, the sound of a steel door slamming shut on a life of privilege and pretense. They began to walk him toward the cruiser. Darius was stumbling, his legs weak. He looked like a child who had lost his parents at the mall. Then he stopped. He dug his heels into the gravel. He looked up at the window again. Nia, he roared. It was a sound of pure desperation. Nia, please, I am sorry. I am sorry about the picture. I am sorry about Vanessa. Just come down here. Talk to them. You can fix this. You always fix this. I looked at him. I saw the tears streaming down his face. I saw the fear. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of sadness. Not for him, but for the time I had wasted loving a man who only valued me for my utility. I opened the window. The cool night air rushed in. Darius looked up, hope flooding his face. Nia, thank God. Tell them it is a mistake. You are my wife. You are supposed to stand by me. I leaned out slightly. My voice was calm, carrying clearly over the silence of the driveway. I can't help you, Darius. Why not? He screamed, struggling against the officer's grip. Why are you doing this? We are family. I shook my head slowly. No, Darius, you made it very clear tonight. I paused, letting the words hang there heavy and undeniable. I am just the woman standing outside the picture, I said. And people outside the picture don't pay bail. Darius stared at me. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The realization finally hit him. He had pushed me out of the frame, and I had taken the entire background with me. Get him in the car, the sergeant ordered. The officer pushed Darius's head down to protect it as he shoved him into the back seat of the cruiser. Darius didn't fight anymore. He slumped against the window, watching me. I watched back. The cruiser's lights flashed one last time, red, blue, washing over the estate that was now legally mine. Then the car pulled away. Lucille was sitting on the bottom step of the porch, sobbing into her hands. Not because her son was going to jail, but because her ATM was gone. I closed the window. I locked it. I turned back to the empty, quiet room. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But it was a good kind of tired. It was the kind of tired you feel after cleaning a very dirty house. I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the fireplace. I looked different. The lines of tension around my eyes were gone. The slump in my shoulders from carrying 3 adult humans for a decade had vanished. I picked up my phone. I had one more call to make. I dialed the number for the locksmith. "This is Nia Brooks," I said when the dispatcher answered. "I know it is late, but I need an emergency rekeying of an estate in Baldwin Hills. Yes, the entire property, Gates Doors garage, and I need it done now." I hung up. I walked to the kitchen. I opened a bottle of water. I stood there in the dark listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Darius was on his way to a holding cell. Vanessa was probably arguing with Marcus in his car. Lucille was weeping on the porch. And I was standing in the center of my own life, fully in focus for the first time in 10 years. The picture was finally perfect. Because they weren't in it. The red taillights of the police cruiser disappeared around the bend of the driveway, taking my husband with them. The silence that rushed back into the estate was sudden and violent. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannon fire stops. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. The air tasted different now. It tasted clean. It tasted like freedom. I turned around and walked back into the house. The front door was wide open just as Lucille had left it when she ran out to save her son. I walked into the foyer and saw her. She had retreated back inside, collapsing onto the velvet bench near the grand staircase. She was staring at the floor, her hands trembling in her lap. I checked my watch. It was 12:45 a.m. "Lucille," I said. My voice echoed in the cavernous hallway. She did not look up. She just rocked back and forth slightly. "They took him," she whispered. "They took my boy. You let them take him." "He took himself," Lucille first corrected her. I just pointed out the direction. I walked past her into the living room. I needed to inspect the damage. The wine stain on the rug was setting. The broken glass near the fireplace glittered under the chandelier lights. This was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, and I was the cleaner. I walked back to the foyer and stood over her. "You have 30 minutes, I said." Lucille finally looked up. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivers. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "What did you say?" I said. "You have 30 minutes, I repeated, checking my watch again. I called the locksmith. "He is on his way. He will be here in exactly half an hour to change the cylinders on every door in this house. By the time he arrives, I want you and your belongings on the other side of that gate." "You cannot be serious," Lucille gasped. She stood up, her legs shaky. "It is 1 a.m. I have nowhere to go. This is my house. I have lived here for 5 years. My room is upstairs. My clothes are here. My medicine is here." "Your medicine is portable," I said. "And your clothes can be packed. As for this being your house, we established earlier that this is a corporate asset of Shadow Oak Holdings. And frankly, Lucille, you are a liability I can no longer afford to insure." I turned and walked toward the kitchen to get a trash bag. "I am not leaving," Lucille screamed behind me, her voice cracked, desperate and shrill. "I am not leaving my son's house. You are the intruder here. You are the thief. I am staying right here until Darius comes back." I stopped. I turned around slowly. "Darius is not coming back, Lucille. Not tonight. And given the federal charges he is facing, likely not for the next 10 to 15 years. I walked back to her holding the black plastic trash bag. I held it out to her. "Here, start packing, or I will have the security team pack for you. And they are not known for their folding techniques." Lucille slapped the bag out of my hand. It fluttered to the floor like a dead bird. "No!" she shrieked. She ran into the living room and threw herself onto the white sofa, gripping the armrest with both hands. Her knuckles turned white. She wrapped her legs around the coffee table leg. It was a display of pure infantile regression. A 65-year-old woman clinging to furniture like a toddler, refusing to leave a toy store. I am not going. You will have to drag me out. This is my furniture. I picked this fabric. It is mine. I watched her with a mixture of pity and disgust. This was the woman who had terrorized me for a decade. This was the woman who had criticized my cooking, my hair, my family, and my career. This was the woman who told me I was lucky that Darius settled for me. And now, she was reduced to a barnacle clinging to a sinking ship. I pulled out my phone. I did not call security. I called the only person in this family who possessed a spine. I dialed Brad. He answered on the first ring. Nia, is everything okay? Is Maya okay? Maya is sleeping, Brad said quickly. She is safe. Kayla is with her. I am sitting in my car down the street. I saw the police leave. I saw Darius in the back seat. I need you to come back, Brad, I said. What is wrong? Your mother-in-law is currently hugging the sofa and refusing to vacate the premises, I said dryly. And if I have to physically remove her, I will likely face an assault charge. And I am really trying to keep my record clean tonight. I will be there in 2 minutes, Brad said. I hung up. I walked over to the armchair opposite the sofa and sat down. I crossed my legs and watched Lucille. She was muttering to herself, praying to a god she only remembered when she needed money. Lord, strike this woman down. Lord, save this house. Lord, bring my Darius back. I waited. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked loudly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was the countdown to the end of an era. 2 minutes later, headlights swept across the living room window. The front door opened. Brad walked in. He looked exhausted. His tie was gone, his top button undone. He looked 10 years older than he had this morning. He walked into the living room and stopped when he saw Lucille. Mom, Brad said softly. Lucille looked up. Hope flared in her eyes. Bradley. Thank God. Get this woman out of here. Tell her she can't kick me out. Tell her the law. You are a lawyer. Sue her. Brad shook his head. He walked over to the sofa. I can't sue her, Mom. She owns the house. We saw the papers. Darius defaulted. It is over, Lucille wailed. It was a high, thin sound. No, it is not over. Darius will fix it. Darius is in federal custody, Mom. Brad said, his voice firm. He is not fixing anything. Now come on, you can't stay here. He reached out a hand to her. Lucille slapped his hand away. She gripped the sofa cushion tighter. I am not going to your house. It is too small. The guest room smells like dog. I belong here. I stood up. I had heard enough. Brad, you have 5 minutes to get her into your car, I said. Or I am calling the sheriff to assist with a trespassing intruder. And I don't think Lucille wants her mugshot taken on the same night as her son's. Brad looked at me. He nodded. He understood. He bent down and grabbed Lucille by the shoulders. He was not gentle this time. He was efficient. Mom, get up. Now. He pulled. Lucille resisted, hooking her heels against the table. The heavy glass table screeched across the marble floor, a horrible grinding sound that made my teeth ache. No, no, I am the matriarch. I am the queen. You are trespassing, Brad shouted. It was the first time I had ever heard him yell at her. He yanked her upward. Her grip on the sofa broke. She stumbled forward, falling against him. He wrapped his arms around her to keep her upright, but also to restrain her. She beat her fists against his chest. You are a traitor, Bradley. You are letting her win. Brad ignored her. He half-carried, half-dragged her toward the door. She kicked her legs, one of her expensive shoes flying off and hitting the wall. My shoe, she screamed. Leave it. Brad grunted. He hauled her through the foyer. I followed them to the door. I picked up the shoe she had lost. It was a Jimmy Choo. I had paid for it last Christmas. I tossed it out onto the driveway after them. Brad managed to get her to his car. He opened the back door and shoved her inside. She scrambled to get out, but he engaged the child lock and slammed the door shut. I could see her through the window screaming silently, banging her hands against the glass. Brad leaned against the car for a moment, catching his breath. Then he turned and walked back up the steps to where I was standing. He looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes, only shame. "I am sorry, Nia," he said. I looked at him. "Sorry for what, Brad? For the heavy lifting?" "No," he said. "I am sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I saw how they treated you. I saw the way Lucille talked to you. I saw the way Darius used you. I knew about the gambling. I knew about the fake charity." He looked down at his shoes. "I was a coward. I was afraid of rocking the boat. I was afraid Kayla would leave me if I went against her mother. So I just watched. I let you carry the load alone. And that makes me just as bad as them." I looked at this man. He was weak, yes. But he was not malicious. And tonight, he had saved Maya. He had chosen the child over the dynasty. "You are not like them, Brad," I said softly. "You came back for Maya. You came back for Lucille. You are the one cleaning up the mess you didn't make. That counts for something." Brad looked at the house, the massive white pillars glowing in the moonlight. "What are you going to do with the place?" he asked. "Put it on the market." I turned and looked at the mansion. It was beautiful, architecturally stunning, and completely poisoned by memories. "I can't live here," I said. "I can't walk into that kitchen without seeing Vanessa eating my food. I can't sleep in that bedroom without wondering who Darius was texting. I am going to sell it. I want to liquidate it as fast as possible. I don't care about profit. I just want the ledger closed." Brad nodded. "It will sell fast. It is a prime location." I looked at Brad. I thought about Maya. I thought about where she would live. Brad and Kayla lived in a 3-bedroom townhouse. It was tight. And Maya loved the pool here. She loved the garden. This was the only home she had ever known. "How much is your townhouse worth, Brad?" I asked. He blinked, confused by the pivot. "About 800,000. "Why? And how much do you have in savings?" "Not much," he admitted. "Maybe 50 grand. Why?" I looked at the house again. The market value was 4 million. The outstanding balance on the mortgage I held was 2 million. "I will sell it to you," I said. Brad laughed nervously. "Nia, I just told you. I have 50 grand. I can't afford a $4 million house." "I am not asking for 4 million," I said. "I am asking for the exact amount of the outstanding principal. 2 million. Brad stared at me. That is half price. That is a $2 million gift." "It is not a gift for you, Brad," I said sternly. "It is for Maya." I stepped closer to him. "I want Maya to grow up in this house. I want her to keep her room. I want her to swim in that pool. But I want her to grow up here with people who actually love her. I want her to have a home where she isn't ignored, where she isn't used as a pawn." "But the financing," Brad stammered. "I can't get a loan for 2 million overnight." "I am the bank, Brad," I reminded him. "I will carry the note. You sell your townhouse. You give me the equity as a down payment. You pay me a monthly mortgage at a fair interest rate. Shadow Oak Holdings becomes your lender. But this time the borrower is someone I trust." Brad's eyes filled with tears. He looked overwhelmed. "Nia, why?" "After everything we did to you, because you stepped out of the picture too," I said. "And because you are the only one left who deserves a frame." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the master key I had kept. I pressed it into his hand. "The locksmith will be here in 15 minutes. Tell him to key it to you. Tell him you are the new owner." Brad looked at the key in his hand. He looked at me. "Thank you, Nia. I promise. I promise we will fill this house with good things. No more lies. No more secrets." I nodded. I knew he would. "Take your mother-in-law to a hotel, Brad. Or a shelter. I don't care. Just get her off my driveway." He nodded. He turned and walked back to his car. He got in. I watched as he backed out, Lucille still screaming silently in the back seat. I stood alone on the porch. The driveway was empty. The house was empty. I walked down the steps to my Porsche. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. I didn't look back at the house. It wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Maya now. I started the engine. The rumble of the motor was the only sound in the hills. I checked the time. 100 a.m. The eviction was complete. The transaction was closed. I put the car in gear and drove toward the gate. As I passed the stone pillars, I saw the locksmith's van pulling up the hill. I flashed my lights at him as I passed a silent signal that the job was his. I drove down the winding road, leaving the heights of Baldwin Hills behind. The city lights of Los Angeles sprawled out below me, a grid of endless possibilities. I had entered that house as a victim. I left as a victor. I reached for the radio and turned it up. I didn't know where I was going to sleep tonight. Maybe the Four Seasons again. Maybe I would just drive until the sun came up. It didn't matter. For the first time in my life, the destination wasn't as important as the fact that I was the one driving. 6 months have passed since the night the lights went out in Baldwin Hills. 6 months since I drove down that winding driveway, leaving the wreckage of the Brooks dynasty in my rearview mirror. People often ask me if I regret it. They ask if I regret burning down a marriage of 10 years in a single night. They ask if I feel guilty for sending my husband to prison. I am sitting here this morning at a small round table at Café de Flore in Paris. The coffee is strong. The croissant is flaky. The morning sun is hitting the cobblestones of the Boulevard Saint-Germain. And as I look around at this beautiful, vibrant city that is now my home, I can honestly say that my only regret is that I did not do it sooner. I am not just surviving. I am thriving. Shadow Oak Holdings has expanded. We opened a European division last month focusing on sustainable luxury real estate. My days are filled with meetings in boardrooms where my voice is respected, not tolerated. My nights are peaceful. I sleep in Egyptian cotton sheets in an apartment overlooking the Seine, and nobody asks me to pay for a debt they created. But I know you are not here to hear about my coffee. You are here for the update. You want to know what happened to the people who tried to erase me. Let's start with Darius, my husband, the man who wanted to be a king. He is currently residing at the Federal Correctional Institution in Lompoc. It is a low-security facility, but it is still a cage. He took a plea deal. His lawyer advised him that with the mountain of evidence I provided, the forensic audit, the bank records, the whistleblower report, a trial would be suicide. He pled guilty to 3 counts of tax evasion and 1 count of wire fraud. He was sentenced to 8 years. I hear he works in the prison laundry. I find that poetic. For a man who refused to air his dirty laundry in public, he is now forced to wash other men's dirty laundry every single day. He has tried to call me. I see the collect calls come through on my blocked list. I never answer. I have nothing to say to inmate number 49,201 that cannot be said by my divorce attorney. And yes, the divorce was finalized last week. I did not ask for alimony. I did not ask for a settlement. I simply took my freedom and left him with his debts. Then there is Vanessa, the golden girl, the woman who thought she could charm her way out of gravity. Without Darius's stolen money to prop her up, Vanessa's world collapsed within 48 hours. Her Range Rover was repossessed in the parking lot of a grocery store. It was quite a scene according to the witnesses. She screamed at the tow truck driver that she knew the mayor. The driver did not care. She lost custody of Maya. The videos I showed Brad were admissible in family court. The judge was horrified. Vanessa was granted supervised visitation only, which means she can see her daughter for 2 hours on alternate Saturdays at a court-approved center. She had to move out of her condo. She lives in a studio apartment in the valley now. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she is working at a nail salon. She does manicures. The woman who used to make fun of the service staff at parties is now scrubbing calluses for minimum wage plus tips. I hope she is learning humility, but knowing Vanessa, she is probably just blaming me for her bad luck. And finally, Lucille, the matriarch. This might be the most satisfying part of all. Lucille is living with Brad and Kayla, but she is not living as a queen. She is living as a guest in a house where she has no power. Brad stayed true to his word. He bought the mansion from me. I hold the mortgage and he pays me every month on time. But he sold his townhouse and moved into the big house with Kayla and Maya. And because they needed childcare and Lucille had nowhere else to go, they allowed her to move into the guest suite. But there are rules. Brad is the man of the house now. He controls the finances. He controls the social calendar. Lucille has been banned from the country club because without my annual dues, she cannot afford the membership. The Heritage Foundation was dissolved, and her reputation in society is in tatters. The women she used to bully now ignore her at church. She spends her days watching television and complaining about her arthritis. She has become exactly what she feared most: irrelevant, small, a footnote in someone else's story. But the most important update is about Maya. I FaceTime with her every Sunday. She looks different, lighter. She is getting straight A's in school. She is taking piano lessons. She tells me that Uncle Brad and Auntie Kayla are fun. She tells me that nobody yells at night. She tells me that she feels safe. Last week she showed me a drawing she made. It was a picture of a house. A big white house. In the front yard she drew 4 stick figures holding hands. Brad, Kayla, herself, and me. She didn't draw Darius. She didn't draw Vanessa. She drew the people who showed up. That drawing is currently framed on my desk in Paris. It is worth more to me than the $2 million mortgage note. I finished my coffee and signaled for the check. The waiter smiled and brought it over. I paid with my own card, my own money, my own hard work. I stood up and walked over to the edge of the terrace. I pulled out my phone. 6 months ago, Darius asked me to step out of a photo because he wanted to capture a legacy. He wanted an image of perfection. He wanted to pretend that the foundation of his life wasn't built on my back. He didn't realize that when you remove the foundation, the house falls down. I turned my back to the street and held up my phone. I framed the shot. Behind me, the Eiffel Tower rose majestically into the blue sky. The iron latticework was strong and permanent. I smiled, a real smile. Not the tight, polite smile of a wife trying to keep the peace. Not the fearful smile of a woman walking on eggshells. This was the smile of a woman who had walked through the fire and came out made of gold. I snapped the photo. It is just me in the frame. No husband, no mother-in-law, no drama, just Nia. I look at the photo and I see the truth. They wanted to crop me out to protect a fake legacy. But by stepping out, I didn't disappear. I expanded. I realized that the frame they were trying to force me into was too small for my spirit. They wanted a picture of a family. I gave them a picture of reality. If you are watching this and you feel like you are being erased, if you feel like you are standing on the edge of a frame waiting for permission to be seen, if you are funding a lifestyle that disrespects you, if you are loving people who only love what you provide, listen to me. Step out. Do not wait for them to ask you. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait until you have a plan for every single detail. Just step out. Step out of the disrespect. Step out of the manipulation. Step out of the ungratefulness. It will be scary. The night I drove away was the scariest night of my life. I didn't know if I would make it. I didn't know if I was strong enough to stand alone. But look at me now. The air is cleaner out here. The sun is brighter. And the view is spectacular. My name is Nia. I was a wife. I was a victim. Now I am a CEO. I am a savior. And I am the author of my own story. They have their photo. It is a mugshot. I have mine. And it is a masterpiece. If you have ever had to walk away to find yourself, let me know in the comments below. Type 1, stepped out. So I know I am not alone. Share this story with a sister or a friend who needs the courage to leave a table where love is no longer being served. Hit that like button and subscribe because my journey is far from over. In fact, I think I might buy a vineyard next. After all, success is the best revenge. But happiness is the ultimate justice. Au revoir.